Right. The only thought is, if whoever are already, grown up and other people, they may not adopt, but if you can sow the seeds right at the beginning, probably they will make it a part of their lifestyle, and then you don't need to teach it separately, or you don't even need to have a meditation room separately. When it becomes part of their life, they'll actually be in the morning practicing at their house itself, and they don't need it in their office, in fact.
Right. Well, yeah, and again, I can only tell you how these things have sort of filtered in American life in a tremendous variety of ways. So I don't think there's any one way. But if people think the teachings are relics of the past and not relevant to their lives, they won't find time for them. They won't bring the wisdom into their lives, and that's up to the people of India to make the teachings relevant, to convince people that they're relevant and they have practical value. And maybe the scientific research we've done in the West can be of help in that regard. There's been a tremendous amount of research that is in the language of science, not the language of religion. And I mean, I understand it, because when I was young, I rejected all of the past of my society. We wanted everything new. Mm-hmm. We just thought anything old was useless.
And that's what the Indians.
That's one of the reasons we turned to India. Meanwhile, Indians are doing the same thing and turning to the West. But what we have to offer is going to leave you empty inside. If we had turned to the East and only looked at the swamis and gave up on material life, we would have become a nation of sannyasis, and we would be uncomfortable and poor. But we didn't. We integrated it into our lives. And to their credit, the sannyasis who came, the swamis said, "Look, I'm a renunciate. You don't have to renounce. You can live a good life. Go get an education and get a job."
Basically, the karma yoga that Vivekananda taught.
Yeah.
So who is one of the biggest influencer from Indian society to the West, based on your research?
The three most important gurus, in my mind. There were many, many, many. But the three that had the biggest impact on the West were Vivekananda.
Mm-hmm. You will put him first, right?
Yes. I'm not going to rank these three, but in time sequence, it was Vivekananda, and his legacy continues because of the teaching institutions that he left behind and the books. Mm-hmm. Then Paramahansa Yogananda, who set up a whole series of centers and everything, and moved to America and lived in America the last 32 years of his life, and wrote the autobiography of a yogi, which is one of the most important books in this regard. And then Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who the Beatles made him world famous, and he systematized his meditation practice to make it amenable to scientific inquiry, and that had a huge impact. So I count those three as, and I have to be careful, because when I say that, people think I'm diminishing their guru.
Yeah,
I'm not saying one was good and the others are not as good. I'm saying they had the biggest impact. And that's hard to argue.
We still find a big contrast within even the American society, because even if we talk of 20 million people doing yoga and 40 million people doing meditation, looking at the Indian population, it's still not a bigger number. Maybe much more than that. In India are already practicing it, and they follow that lifestyle. Only because India is so big, we don't get to see those people. So my point is, this contrast is still existing in India, but what we see as the dominating factor is all those people who are living that lavish lifestyle with all the money they have. So till the time that becomes a symbol of good lifestyle, we are not able to change it, even in America, even in India. How to?
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to these things. I can also tell you that made these teachings popular is that they happen to appeal to certain famous people, celebrities. It got a lot of attention. The Beatles, Oprah, all that sort of thing. But it was also the scientific was a key factor here. scientific verification. That made people take notice, and that's what got it into the mainstream of American society, away from, you know, the bohemian culture and the hippies and the counterculture. It made it a medical practice, a psychological issue. But the other factor is the teachings of Vedanta, the ideas, they hold up to reason, they hold up to evidence. And as a philosophy, you know, people can absorb them and they make sense, they make intuitive sense.
If I may ask you, can you give me a couple of instances of those scientific findings which were actually done and then people started believing it more? Because even in India, maybe there are, you know, discussions going on, does this have any scientific finding? So maybe if you can give me a couple of instances, maybe if I can quote that to the readers, they'll find it more useful.
Wish I could give you references, but historically what happened was after the Beatles put meditation in everybody's awareness, millions of young people were starting to practice meditation, usually transcendental meditation. And people's lives changed for the better. So there was research done beginning around 1970, and they would be published in scientific journals. And the early studies were, and this is held up for 40 years now, that these practices lower blood pressure for people with high blood pressure, they reduce stress, they reduce anxiety, they produce more coherence in the mind, and more orderliness in the mind, and so they became synonymous with stress reduction and the neutralization of tension. So any disorder, mental or physical, that's related to chronic tension and stress, there's usually some study that shows meditation and yoga can help. Now there's studies even showing performance and creativity improve. And with regard to health, anything from, you know, sort of musculoskeletal problems to hypertension and heart disease, recovery from surgery, those are the kind of things I remember reading about. Prevention of recurrence of heart disease, there's a lot of research on that. And, you know, and if India keeps eating the way Americans do and working the way Americans do, you're going to need it.
Personally, what it has meant to you, personally?
Yeah.
Personally, what it has meant to you?
Well, it started, you know, as...
So it's like from 60s you said it started influencing, and now you are here in India talking to Indians about the Indian philosophy.
Isn't it interesting?
How has this journey been, and what it will last?
Some inference that, wow, maybe there's something really of value in my own tradition that I've overlooked, then I'm very happy. But that's not my purpose, and I wouldn't presume to make it that. I'm just reporting on what's happened in the West and letting Indian people know that the great heritage of Vedanta, yoga, and everything there's millions of Americans who are very grateful for it, and it's changed a lot about American life for the better. And I think it's a terribly important phenomenon. I forget what you